Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are going to discuss from political rights to cultural rights. This lecture is a part of your paper Media and Margins. One of the essential issues of the politics has been to maintain an equilibrium balance between the right of an individual and the authority of the state. The authority of the state is essential to store stability and order, and the rights of an individual are important in developing the personality. Rights of a citizen and the authority of the state may not always be into loggerheads with one another. Rights can be protected and developed in an orderly state. Keeping this in mind, we will discuss the nature, genesis, and characteristics of the term right with special focus on the political and cultural rights. In this lecture, we will learn the meaning of the concept of right and how, through the process of its evolution, it underwent a transition in its form, especially from political to that of cultural. The political and the cultural rights are important for the full development of the individual. We will discuss the significance of these rights for the empowerment of the citizen. Basic concept of rights. The concept of right can be best understood as a claim, especially a social claim of an individual or a group to develop their personality or to harness or protect their interests. Lasky, in his book Grammar of Politics, opines, rights are those conditions of social life without which no man can seek in general to be himself at his best. The rights are important because they enhance the capacities of an individual to develop. They are social in nature because they had their genesis in the society and generally emanate within the society. However, they may be granted by the society, but it is the duty of the state to recognize, maintain, and secure them. Thus, the rights can be positive or negative in nature. Positive rights are those rights which give complete freedom to an individual to participate in the political sphere. On the other hand, negative rights are the ones to which the state restrains from its usage. Therefore, the concept of right derives its legitimacy from the state and is driven by morality. They are in accordance to the conscience of an individual or the customs existing in the society. Historical development of rights across the world. The idea of right is as old as that of the state. It finds its origin in ancient Greek and Roman political systems of Europe, Islamic political system of the Muslim countries, and the panchayat system in India. However, the concept of rights was not as developed as we understand it today. There were several revolutions across the world that contributed in the development of the concept of rights. Britain's constitutional documents, mainly the Magna Carta in 1215, the Petition of Rights in 1628, and the Bill of Rights in 1628 are regarded as the forerunners of the modern Bills of Rights. It was only in the late 17th and the 18th centuries that a necessity was felt for the set of written human rights. The rights and dignity of the man was considered as the locus of the political philosophy at that time. Virginia Declaration of Rights in 1776, American Declaration of Independence in 1776, and French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen in 1789 were few of the efforts taken to set a written document of rights. America in 1791 was the first country to adopt the American Bill of Rights in its constitution. It provided a model for the protection of the human rights. Gradually, the world followed the footsteps of United States and countries adopted the incorporation of rights in their respective constitutions, like Belgian Constitution of 1831, Greek Constitution of 1864, and Austrian Constitution of 1867. Simultaneously, the world witnessed the creeping of rights into political, social, and civil fields. The British, American, and French documents elaborated on the civil and political rights, while the Soviet Russia in 1917 under the October Revolution highlighted the social, economic, and the cultural rights. This socialist revolution recognized the social, economic, and cultural rights as human rights. Ironically, the Western countries never recognized these human rights. The impact of the socialist revolution was seen on the international agencies like the United Nations, which incorporated the human rights at the international level. The establishment of the United Nations in 1945 saw the evolution of the international Bills of Rights. The year 1948 saw the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that included the combination of the civil, political, social, and economic rights. Subsequently, the United Nations adopted two covenants in 1966 on civil and political rights and the economic, social, and cultural rights. Thus, these rights are legally binding now. The concept of human rights stresses on equal treatment of individuals and is a binding compulsion on all the states to adopt it. In almost all democratic nations, there is now the compulsory enactment of the human rights in the Constitution, rights as understood in the Indian context. In the ancient India, rights of an individual were never focal point of discussion. The Indian society was always about a community and never about an individual. Romila Thapar, the great historian, in her work History and Beyond, explained how in India the community was based on kinship and lineage. The size of the family primarily depended upon the economy and the availability of the natural resources around. The genealogical relationship tied the family together. However, with the growth in the population, the Indian society saw a shift towards a system based on the division between the ruler and the ruled. The society was based on the Machanyaya depicting the anarchic system. In the early times of the Indian political thought, Kautilya's Arthashastra threw light on the more detailed picture of the statecraft. Although the state was monarchical in nature, but there was a civil law to protect the people of the state and maintain the administration. It was the duty of the state to uphold dharma and danda, that is punishment, was given to those who broke the law. Manusmriti stressed on the defined social categories based on varnas, where on the basis of the birth, the characteristic of the Brahmins, Vaisyas, Sudras and Kshatriyas was mentioned. However, only the men and especially the Brahmins were given the right over practice of religion, control the notion of purity and pollution within the society, and define the food habits, etc. Brahmanism used the ideology of caste as a crucial instrument to dehumanize, divide, and dominate the productive majority. Though monarchy was predominant in ancient India, but several references of republic were also found. Steve Muhlberger in Democracy in Ancient India wrote, "In ancient India, monarchical thinking was constantly battling with another vision of self-rule by members of a guild, a village, or art extended kin group. In other words, any group of equals with a common set of interests. This vision of cooperative self-government often produced republicanism and even democracy comparable to classical Greek democracy. During the medieval India, even Fatwa-e-Jahandari and Aini-Akbari somehow was parallel to the Arthashastra. Bharani stressed that the administration stood on the pillars of administration and the conquest. The duty of the king was service to the religion and maintenance of the army and military. He recognized the rights of an individual like that of wife, children, slaves, etc., and anybody who infringed the rights were penalized as it would destabilize the law and order of the state. Thus, the religion and the polity of the state were intertwined. That was the reason the evil practices like caste system, sati system, polygamy, etc. were openly practiced in India, as all these practices got religious legitimacy. With the advent of the British in India, modernity introduced the rights to a citizen. There was a wake for the recognition of the rights. Social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Swami Vivekananda stressed on the social reforms like abolition of sati system, ban of dowry, etc. This way, the rights of the woman were protected. However, modern Indian political thinkers like Gandhi and Maulana Azad still correlated religion and politics. For Gandhi, Varnashram Dharma was the basis of the Indian society, and he promoted the rights in the village community and talked about Swaraj and Sarvodaya. Swaraj meant self-rule and aims at the emancipation and increasing the capacity of the individual. However, he promoted integrative democracy where all, including women, Harijans, etc., got right to equality, liberty and justice. Similarly, Ambedkar brought a shift in his analysis of the Indian society and the rights by talking about how important it is to restore the rights of an individual. He imbibed from the French Revolution and the Buddhist ideology and stressed on the rights of individual pertaining to equality, liberty and justice. During the drafting of the Constitution of India, Ambedkar, on the note of understanding the importance of rights, developed Part 3 on fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. It became the basis of the democracy of the Indian Constitution, where all individuals enjoyed the rights holistically, sans any discrimination based on caste, creed, color, or sex enjoyed. The fundamental rights are based on adult suffrage. It is the duty of the state to protect and uphold the fundamental rights of the citizens. Thus, these rights guarantee civil liberties to all and aim at removing the inequalities in the society and emancipation of all. Now, before understanding the link or connection between the political and cultural rights, we must first understand the meaning of the concept of the political and the cultural rights, types of rights. There are actually several kinds of rights like the social, civil, political, cultural rights. However, in this lecture, our focus will be only on the understanding of the political and cultural rights. Political rights. The political rights can be best understood as the rights that are used in the formation and participation of the state. These rights are enjoyed by the citizens of the state only. They are legitimate in nature and are sanctioned by the state. The political rights include right to vote, right of freedom of expression, etc. According to Lasky, the political rights include three important points: right to adult suffrage, right to freedom of expression, and right to be elected. Only then the true democratic state could be stabilized. Cultural rights. On the other hand, the cultural rights are the group rights that guarantee people and the communities to practice and enjoy their culture freely sans any fear. These rights are related to the themes of language, religion, minority culture, etc. These rights conserve the way of life of the people. The fundamental rights of India, right to freedom of religion, Article 25 to 28, and right to cultural and educational right, Articles 29 and 30, pertain to the cultural rights. These rights are not only cultural in nature, rather, they are also political, economic in nature, where it forwards the claim to be accommodated and identified. These two varied rights hold utter importance in the society. The political rights talks about egalitarianism and universalization. It stresses that all citizens of the country shall enjoy common rights to vote, political participation, etc., sans any exclusion or discrimination. This way, the political rights are integrative in nature. They are legitimate and inviolable. Any citizen naturally born in a state, or if taken the citizenship of a state, automatically is entitled to enjoy the political rights of a state. Contrarily, the cultural right aims at the maintenance of the distinctiveness of the culture of the minority. It is a group right which speaks against the process of universalization and instead calls for the protection of the diversity of the cultural practices. Thus, it is many times associated with the identity politics. On the notion of multiculturalism, thinkers like Kukatas opine that the minorities shall be left on their own and not integrated by the state, while the other thinkers like Will Kimlicka believe that the group differentiated rights understand and respond to the challenges projected by the process of multiculturalism. Thus, the state shall provide for affirmative action and positive discrimination for the minorities. It has actually a perspective approach from political to cultural rights. From the above mentioned historical development of the rights in India, it is clear that the evolution of the concept of the rights in India is as old as the state. In ancient and medieval India, right was never understood as individualistic in nature. Rather, it was always a group right embedded in the society but sanctioned by the state. It was only with the advent of the British that the concept of individual rights became popular and people, especially women, Dalits, tribes, started becoming aware of their social, political, and cultural rights. Amongst these points, one has to keep in mind that the national political discourse in India essentially rested upon the cultural elitism that mainly privileged the Brahmins. Several thinkers like Phule, Periyar, and Ambedkar questioned the Brahmanical hegemony. The famous Pune Pact saw Ambedkar and Gandhi in the loggerheads on the issue of political versus cultural rights. At the second roundtable conference, Ambedkar argued in favor of the separate electorate for the depressed classes. He opined, although the depressed classes are included among the Hindus, they in no sense form an integral part of that community. Not only have they a separate existence, but they have also assigned to them a statute which is invidiously different from the status occupied by any other community in India. On the other hand, Gandhi opposed the separate electorate of the depressed classes. He did not want to restrict the depressed classes to just this measly share of seats, but to enable them to stake their claim to the kingdom of the whole world. What was clear was that there was, with the caste system continuing in existence, no way in which the depressed classes could stake their claim to kingdom of the whole world. It is like present day opponents of reservation asking, why should the lower castes aspire only to the reserved seats? If they are good enough, they can get all the seats. In his letter to MacDonald on 9 September 1932, Gandhiji wrote, in the establishment of separate electorates for the depressed classes, I sense the injection of a poison that is calculated to destroy Hinduism and do no good whatever to the depressed classes. He believed that it was essential to preserve the categorization of society based upon the Varna system. He believed that the Hindu system was able to sustain itself for so long because of the caste system. He linked the emancipation of Harijans with Swaraj. The seeds of Swaraj are to be found in the caste system. However, formerly, where Gandhi based his defense of the caste system on religious grounds, later in his defense on Ambedkar's attacks, he opined that the Varna system should not be confused with the Jati system. In post-independent India, the fundamental rights gave equal rights to all. They had a holistic approach with the aim of establishing a democratic society. However, the minorities mainly face a threat to their cultural rights owing to their small numbers and being marginalized by the dominant culture. As such, the streamlined like the Northeasterns, like Manipuris or tribes like Tharu, remain in the outskirts of the mainstream society. They fear for their security and are excluded and discriminated from the benefit of availability of opportunities and resources. Owing to their historical background and underdevelopment because of the negligence of the state and hegemony of the dominant culture, the minorities even face the threat of protection of their identity. Therefore, the gap between the approaches of the political and cultural rights asserts on the importance of the role of media in connecting the political with the cultural rights. Media as a mediator between the political and cultural rights. Media has an immense capacity of transmission of the news across the globe. It provides for a public space for awareness of what is happening, dialogue amongst the state and citizens to reflect and transformation of the society. In this process, the media highlights the existence of multiple cultures in the Indian society. The celebration of Eid, Diwali, Christmas showcase the practice of secularism and upholding of the democratic values in true form. The media, while reporting the abuses of the cultural rights like that of Manipuris in Delhi, aids the state in making better protective policies for the minorities. Many a times, the media even reports the shortcomings of the cultural practices like triple talaq amongst Muslims is taking away the right to equality of the Muslim woman. The Muslim women are at receiving ends of the patriarchal culture and structure. Still, the Muslims, under the right of protection of the culture, do not want the Supreme Court to interfere in the culture. This triggers the interesting debate on how the political and the cultural rights are at loggerheads with one another. The role of media here is very interesting as it provides a public space for discussion and debate. Through the reports and quick telecommunications, it even provides facts and feedbacks in between the citizens and the state. This way, it is assisting in the policy making for the protection of the rights. Now, the summary. Let us now try and summarize what we discussed in the text. Rights are a strong weapon of an individual which aids in the development of the personality of an individual. An infringement of the right of an individual means taking away his claim to resources and recognition and pushing him or her back from the privilege to lead the life as per one's wishes. Thus, media plays an important role in not only making the people conversant of their rights, but also making the state alert on delivery of its duty. Do attempt the question in the self-evaluate quadrant. For further reading, suggestions, please refer to the third quadrant. Thank you very much.